Hi, I'm Maya. At my sister's engagement party, she laughed in my face, called my ring dollar store trash, and told everyone I'd never understand real luxury. Then, right in front of her snooty friends, she had me escorted out like I was some kind of wedding crasher. But what she didn't know was that just an hour later, I'd be standing next to Tiffany's CEO as he examined my grandmother's ring and declared it one of the most valuable pieces he'd seen all year. You ever been humiliated by your own family only to discover your worth was greater than they could imagine? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I almost deleted the text without opening it. The message read, Annual Richardson Family Celebration. You're invited, in that overly formal tone Vanessa always used when she was trying to sound important. I hadn't heard from her in months. Not since she told me during our last family dinner that my artistic lifestyle was just a phase I needed to outgrow, as if my passion for jewelry design was some kind of childish rebellion rather than my career. Marcus was across the room in our small apartment, watering the plants that lined our windowsill, humming softly like he always did when he noticed I was lost in thought. He glanced over when he saw my expression change. Who's it from, he asked gently. Vanessa, I muttered, still staring at the screen. She's hosting some kind of fancy party in Boston. Apparently she's engaged now. I couldn't help but scoff. Like I need to witness another chance for her to show off how successful she is. Marcus set down the watering can and came to sit beside me. He looked at me with those patient eyes that had first drawn me to him 3 years ago. You don't have to go, he said. But if there's any part of you that wants to reconnect, maybe find some middle ground, don't ignore that feeling. I knew what he meant. I didn't want anything from Vanessa or her approval. At least that's what I always told myself. But I still found myself sometimes wondering what it might be like to walk into a room with my family and not feel like the disappointing daughter who chose passion over practicality. So I replied to the invitation. 3 days later, I stepped out of the Uber in front of the gleaming hotel an hour before sunset. The spring air carried the scent of cherry blossoms and expensive perfume, and the perfectly manicured garden seemed to watch me with judgment. I wore a simple blue dress I had found at a vintage shop, paired with comfortable flats that wouldn't leave my feet aching. My hair was loose around my shoulders, minimal makeup, just me, real, unfiltered, and acutely aware that I didn't belong in this world of excess. The doorman barely acknowledged me when I gave my name. Inside the grand ballroom was a cathedral of crystal chandeliers and echoing laughter. And there she was, Vanessa, dressed in a designer gown that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent, surrounded by people who looked like they'd stepped out of a luxury magazine. Her smile tightened when she spotted me. Maya, she called out, arms open like she hadn't spent the last decade treating me like a family embarrassment. You actually came? Everyone, this is my little sister. She makes those craft jewelry pieces you see at street fairs. Laughter rippled through the group, casual but cutting. My throat tightened, but I smiled anyway, nodding politely as if I didn't feel my dignity being stripped away with each chuckle. She pulled me aside a few minutes later once the others wandered off toward the champagne fountain. I wasn't sure you'd make it, she said, her voice lowering. Honestly, I was thinking, do you need help with your wardrobe? I can connect you with my stylist if you're, wanting to look more professional. I just looked at her, stunned by her audacity. No, but thank you. Oh, well, she said, relieved but disappointed, like she'd been hoping to remake me in her image so she could finally be proud. The offer stands. The rest of the evening blurred into a series of practiced smiles and awkward silences. At dinner, I sat at the far end of the banquet table next to someone's husband who only talked about golf scores and stock options. I tried not to check my phone too often. Marcus had texted earlier just before the event started, remember who you are. Your worth isn't measured by their standards. I was picking at my dessert when I felt a presence beside me. Vanessa stood there, champagne flute in hand, looking at my left hand where I wore my grandmother's ring, simple, worn, but the most precious thing I owned. Oh, Maya, she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. You're still wearing that old thing? I thought you would have upgraded by now. I looked down at the silver band with its small, cloudy stone. It was Grandma's, I said simply. Vanessa sighed dramatically. Yes, from before Grandpa had any money. It's practically costume jewelry. I keep telling Mom she should have given you something else, it's embarrassing. The table went quiet. I felt heat rising to my cheeks as everyone's eyes fell to my hand. Let me see, said a woman across from me, extending her manicured fingers. Reluctantly, I stretched my hand across the table. She squinted at the ring, then gave a patronizing smile. It's quaint. Very vintage looking. Vintage is generous, Vanessa laughed. It's from the dollar store, basically. My sister has always had unique taste. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Something inside me broke. I stood up suddenly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Excuse me," I managed to say before walking quickly toward the exit. I heard Vanessa behind me, her heels clicking against the marble. "Maya, don't be so sensitive. It was just a joke." But I was already pushing through the doors, out into the cool night air. I sat on a bench facing the hotel garden and pulled out my phone. My fingers hovered over the screen. Finally, I typed to Marcus, "You were right. I shouldn't have come." I didn't expect a reply right away, but 3 minutes later, Marcus sent back, "Stay there. I'm coming to get you." An hour passed, maybe a little more. I watched guests arrive late, listened to laughter from the party behind the windows, and felt more alone than I had in years. Then I heard a commotion at the hotel entrance. There was a cluster of people, phones raised, murmuring excitedly. A sleek black car had pulled up, and from it emerged an older gentleman in an impeccable suit, flanked by what appeared to be security. The hotel manager rushed forward, bowing slightly as he greeted him. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the energy had shifted palpably. Then Marcus appeared, walking beside the distinguished man, gesturing in my direction. My heart began to race. What was happening? Marcus spotted me and waved, motioning for me to join them. I walked slowly, confusion mixing with curiosity. As I approached, I could feel eyes following me, whispers trailing in my wake. "Maya," Marcus said warmly, taking my hand. "I'd like you to meet Mr. James Bennett." The distinguished man extended his hand with a warm smile. "Ms. Richardson, it's a pleasure. Marcus has told me so much about your work." I shook his hand, completely bewildered. "I'm sorry, but I don't." "James Bennett," Marcus said softly. "CEO of Tiffany and Company." My mouth fell open. The CEO of Tiffany was standing in front of me, smiling as if we were old friends. I felt dizzy. "Marcus mentioned you're wearing a family heirloom," Mr. Bennett said. "Would you mind if I took a look? I have a particular interest in vintage pieces." Still stunned, I extended my hand. Mr. Bennett took it gently, examining the ring with expert eyes. He pulled a small loop from his pocket and studied it more closely, his expression growing increasingly intrigued. "Extraordinary," he murmured. "The setting is definitely pre-1920s, but the craftsmanship is exceptional. And this stone?" He looked up at me, eyes wide. "Ms. Richardson, do you know what you're wearing?" I shook my head. "It was my grandmother's. She left it to me when she passed. This appears to be an extremely rare cashmere sapphire. The color, the clarity, they simply don't mind stones like this anymore." He straightened up. "I need to examine it more thoroughly to be certain. But if it's what I believe it is, you're wearing something truly priceless." I couldn't speak. Mr. Bennett smiled kindly at my shock. "Your ring is a piece of history," he continued. "The setting alone is museum quality, likely custom made by one of the master jewelers of the early 20th century. But the stone, if I'm right about its origin, could be worth more than some of the pieces in our flagship store." A crowd had gathered around us now, hotel guests straining to hear what was happening. And through the throng, I saw her, Vanessa, frozen in the doorway of the hotel, champagne flute tilted dangerously in her hand, her face drained of all color. She moved toward us slowly, as if in a trance. "Maya," her voice was small, uncertain. "What's going on?" Mr. Bennett turned to her. "Are you a relative of Ms. Richardson?" Vanessa nodded weakly. "Her sister." "Then you should be extraordinarily proud," he said. "Your family has preserved a remarkable piece of jewelry history. This ring represents craftsmanship that modern technology simply cannot replicate." Vanessa's eyes darted between my face and my hand, disbelief written across her features. "But it's so simple." "The greatest treasures often are," Mr. Bennett replied. Then he turned back to me. "Ms. Richardson, I understand from Marcus that you're a jewelry designer yourself?" I nodded, still struggling to find my voice. "I'd very much like to see your work. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting at our design studio? Talent like yours, combined with an appreciation for historical craftsmanship, is exactly what we look for." Now it was my turn to feel faint. I managed to whisper, "I would be honored." Mr. Bennett handed me his card. "Have your assistant call mine tomorrow. We'll set something up." He smiled again, nodded to the gathered crowd, and then departed with the same quiet dignity with which he'd arrived. In the silence that followed, I felt Marcus's hand steady at my back. His fingers weren't gripping me tightly. They were just there, grounding, quiet, steady. He wasn't the kind of man who needed to show off or prove anything. And maybe that's exactly why no one saw him coming. I stood there, chin up, not because I wanted to rub it in, but because for the first time in years, I had nothing to hide from. The same hotel staff who had barely noticed me earlier now looked at me with newfound respect. And Vanessa, my sister who had always measured worth by price tags and appearances, couldn't seem to form words. The hotel manager approached, flustered and eager. "Ms. Richardson, can I offer you and your guest a complimentary drink in our executive lounge?" "It would be our pleasure to, thank you," I cut in gently, "but we were just leaving." I turned to Vanessa, whose shock was slowly morphing into something else, calculation, perhaps, or the beginnings of damage control. But before she could speak, I said quietly, "I don't wear my grandmother's ring to impress anyone. I wear it because it reminds me where I come from." Her mouth opened and closed without sound. For once in her life, Vanessa Richardson had nothing clever to say. Marcus and I walked out together, through the very doors where I'd fled in humiliation not an hour earlier. The doorman opened them this time with a respectful nod, as if suddenly recognizing my value. Outside, the night air was crisp, the stars extraordinarily bright. As we got into our waiting car, I leaned my head against the seat, watching the golden lights of the hotel shrink behind us. "You planned this, didn't you?" I asked Marcus softly. He shook his head. "Not exactly. When you texted, I was already meeting with Mr. Bennett about the collaborative project my firm is designing for their new concept store. I just mentioned my talented girlfriend and her family heirloom that was being ridiculed at a party. He insisted on coming immediately." "But how did you know? About the ring, I mean." Marcus smiled. "I didn't know specifics, but I had suspicions. Remember last year when I suggested you get it insured? The appraiser said something about its unusual quality. I just connected the dots." We rode in silence for a while. Then my mind drifted back to a different time, a different life. Back to my grandmother's small apartment, the scent of lavender and old books, her hands, worn and veined, holding mine as she slipped the ring onto my finger. "This isn't just silver and stone, Maya," she had said. "This is a reminder that true value isn't always visible at first glance. Your grandfather gave this to me when he had nothing but promises. And those promises were worth more than any diamond." I hadn't understood then. I was 16, more interested in plastic friendship bracelets than family heirlooms. But I'd kept it safe, worn it proudly even when friends got flashier jewelry or when Vanessa mocked its simplicity. Something about its quiet dignity had always felt right on my hand. We pulled up to our apartment building, nothing fancy, just a converted warehouse with big windows and reasonable rent. It wasn't luxury by Vanessa's standards, but it was filled with light and creativity and love. Marcus stepped out first, then offered his hand again like he did earlier that night. "You don't owe them explanations," he said. I smiled. "I know. But deep down, I also knew this wasn't over, because the past never stays buried. Not when your own blood is determined to rewrite history to maintain their position." The buzz of my phone in my purse confirmed it, 12 missed calls, all from Vanessa. I ignored them all. Tonight, for the first time in years, I would sleep without the weight of inadequacy pressing on my chest. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight belonged to vindication. What I didn't know then was that Vanessa's humiliation was just the beginning. Her need to reclaim her narrative would threaten everything I was about to build. The ring on my finger wasn't just jewelry anymore, it was a symbol of a battle I didn't ask for but would have to fight anyway. But that night, as I drifted to sleep with Marcus's arm draped protectively across my waist, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The kind that comes not from winning, but from finally understanding your own worth. Morning light filtered through our bedroom blinds, painting stripes across the floor. I stretched under the cotton sheets, my body still heavy with the emotional exhaustion of the previous night. Marcus had already risen. I could hear the familiar sounds of coffee brewing and quiet music from the kitchen. My phone lay silent on the nightstand, but when I checked it, my heart sank. 28 missed calls. 15 text messages. 3 voicemails. Most from Vanessa, but some from numbers I didn't recognize. I scrolled through the texts, each one more desperate than the last. "Maya, we need to talk. Please call me back. It's important." This is so unprofessional. The least you could do is answer. "Fine. Be that way. But don't say I didn't try to warn you." The last one made my stomach tighten. "Warn me about what?" I played the most recent voicemail. Vanessa's voice came through, honey sweet but with an edge like broken glass. "Maya, darling. I hope you enjoyed your little moment last night. Very dramatic. But you should know that Richard, that's my fiancé, you would know if you bothered to stay at the party, his family has connections at Tiffany. If you think you can leverage one chance meeting into some kind of career opportunity, you're more naive than I thought. Call me back. We should discuss how to handle this like adults." I deleted the message, my hands shaking slightly. Even now, she couldn't let me have this one small victory without trying to poison it. Marcus walked in with 2 mugs of coffee, his bare feet silent against the hardwood. He took one look at my face and set the mugs down on the dresser. "Vanessa?" he asked. I nodded, showing him the text thread. He read quickly, his expression darkening. "She's bluffing," he said finally. "Mr. Bennett doesn't make offers he doesn't intend to keep. And he certainly wouldn't rescind one based on someone's fiancé claiming connections." "You don't know Vanessa," I said quietly. "She doesn't like losing. And last night, in front of all her friends, she lost badly." Marcus sat beside me, taking my hands in his. "Then we make sure you win even bigger. Today, call Mr. Bennett's office. Set up that meeting. Your work deserves to be seen, Maya. Don't let her take this from you." I looked at my portfolio spread across our second bedroom turned studio. Years of designs, hundreds of sketches, dozens of handcrafted pieces that represented not just my skill but my soul. Could I really show them to someone like James Bennett? What if he hated them? What if Vanessa was right and I was just a craft jeweler playing at being an artist? But then I looked down at my grandmother's ring, this supposedly worthless piece that had turned out to be extraordinary, and I felt something shift inside me. Maybe I had been undervaluing myself all along too. I made the call. To my surprise, Mr. Bennett's assistant was expecting me. "Yes, Ms. Richardson. Mr. Bennett mentioned you would be calling. He's quite eager to see your portfolio. Can you come in tomorrow at 11? Just like that, doors were opening. I spent the rest of the day carefully selecting pieces for my presentation, polishing each one until it gleamed, rehearsing what I would say about my design philosophy. Marcus ordered takeout and sat with me late into the night, offering encouragement and honest feedback. "Be yourself," he said as we finally turned out the lights. That's who impressed him in the first place. I slept fitfully, dreams filled with gleaming display cases and disapproving faces. But when morning came, I dressed with careful purpose, professional, but true to my aesthetic in a vintage-inspired dress and boots that made me feel grounded. The Tiffany design studio was nothing like I imagined. No intimidating minimalist space or snooty receptionist. Instead, it was a warm, creative environment, humming with focused energy. Designers bent over workbenches, sketches pinned to walls, the occasional burst of laughter breaking the concentration. Mr. Bennett greeted me himself, shaking my hand warmly before introducing me to his team. "Everyone, this is Maya Richardson, the designer I mentioned. Maya, these are some of our creative minds." I expected polite disinterest. Instead, I received genuine curiosity and respect. They asked thoughtful questions about my process, examined my pieces with expert eyes, and took notes when I explained my inspiration for certain designs. Mr. Bennett himself spent nearly an hour reviewing my portfolio, occasionally calling over a colleague to see a particular piece. At one point, he held up a necklace I designed using reclaimed silver and sea glass. "This is exactly the kind of fresh perspective we've been discussing," he said to the room. "Sustainable luxury with a story. Maya, would you be interested in developing this concept further as part of our new collection?" I nearly dropped my coffee. "I'm sorry. We're launching a limited series focusing on sustainable materials and heritage craftsmanship. Your aesthetic aligns perfectly with our vision. We'd like to offer you a chance to collaborate on a few pieces." It wasn't just a courtesy meeting. It was a job offer. A real, legitimate opportunity to have my designs featured by one of the most prestigious jewelry brands in the world. My head spun with possibility. "I would be honored," I managed to say, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Excellent," Mr. Bennett smiled. "Nina will go over the details with you. We're looking at a 6-month initial commitment, with the possibility of extension depending on how the collection performs." As I walked out of the building 2 hours later, contract in hand, the spring sunshine seemed brighter somehow. I called Marcus immediately. "They want my designs," I said, my voice breaking with emotion. "Not just one piece, a whole collection. And they're paying me, Marcus. Real money. With my name on the pieces." His joy matched mine. "I knew it," he said. "I always knew your work was extraordinary. The world is finally catching up." I was so caught up in the moment that I didn't notice the sleek car parked across the street, or the woman who stepped out of it, designer sunglasses hiding most of her face. I didn't see her until she called my name. "Maya." I turned, the happiness draining from me instantly. Vanessa stood there, looking perfectly put together as always, but there was something different about her posture, tense, uncertain. "What are you doing here?" I asked, clutching my portfolio tighter. "I've been calling you," she said, as if that explained her presence outside the Tiffany design studio. "I've been busy." She stepped closer. "I can see that. Little sister lands a meeting with Tiffany. Congratulations. Her tone made it clear it wasn't a compliment. How did you know I'd be here? She shrugged. I have friends. People talk. So what's the verdict? Did they humor you? The contract in my bag felt suddenly heavy. I could tell her, watch her face fall as she realized I'd achieved something significant without her help or approval. But something held me back. A lifetime of experience had taught me that Vanessa didn't celebrate others' victories, she sabotaged them. It was just a meeting, I said carefully. Mr. Bennett was interested in my grandmother's ring. Her eyes narrowed. Just the ring? Not your little craft projects? That's right. She seemed to relax slightly. Well, that makes more sense. Look, Maya, about last night, I may have overreacted. That ring, if it's actually valuable, it's a family heirloom. Mom should know. And there it was. The real reason for her ambush. Not to apologize, not to make amends, but to lay claim to something that might have value. It was left to me, I said firmly. Grandma was very clear about that. Yes, but she didn't know what it was worth, did she? If she had. Vanessa let the implication hang in the air. If our grandmother had known the ring's true value, surely she wouldn't have wasted it on me. I have to go, I said, stepping around her toward the curb to hail a taxi. This isn't over, Maya, she called after me. Family heirlooms belong to the family. I didn't turn around. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing how her words still had the power to wound me. Instead, I climbed into the first taxi that stopped and gave the driver Marcus's office address. I needed to see him, to ground myself in someone who believed in me without conditions. When I arrived at the architectural firm where Marcus worked, the receptionist greeted me by name and waved me through. I found him in the conference room, surrounded by blueprints and material samples, deep in conversation with colleagues. His face lit up when he saw me. Hey, perfect timing, we just finished, he said, excusing himself from the group. He led me to his office, closing the door behind us. How did it go? You look rattled, I supplied. The meeting was amazing. Life-changing. But Vanessa was waiting for me outside. His expression darkened. What did she want? The ring, I said simply, twisting it on my finger. She called it a family heirloom that belongs to the family. Funny how it was worthless costume jewelry yesterday, but today it's a precious family treasure. Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. Are you surprised? No, I admitted. But I am tired. Tired of always having to defend myself. My choices, even my inheritance. Then don't, he said. You don't know her explanations or justifications. The ring is yours. The Tiffany opportunity is yours. Your talent is yours. I leaned against him, drawing strength from his steadiness. She'll tell our mother. Make it seem like I'm hoarding some priceless family treasure. Let her, Marcus said. Your mom knows you better than that. But did she? My relationship with my mother had always been complicated, not hostile like with Vanessa, but distant. She'd never understood my desire to make jewelry instead of pursuing a real career. She'd never openly taken Vanessa's side, but she'd never really taken mine either. That evening, my prediction came true. My mother called, her voice carefully neutral. Maya, dear. How are you? I'm fine, Mom. How are you? Oh, you know. The usual. Vanessa mentioned she saw you today. Said you had quite the exciting night yesterday. I closed my eyes, bracing myself. Yes, it was unexpected. She mentioned something about Grandma's ring? That it might be valuable? It appears so, I said cautiously. A specialist looked at it and thought it might be rare. I see. There was a long pause. You know, your grandmother would have wanted what's best for the whole family. My heart sank. Mom, she gave me the ring. Specifically. In her will. Yes, but that was before anyone knew its worth. Surely you can see how this changes things. I gripped the phone tighter. Actually, I don't. Its monetary value doesn't change Grandma's wishes. Another pause, longer this time. Maya, be reasonable. If this ring is truly valuable, it represents a significant family asset. Vanessa suggested we could sell it and split the proceeds. That seems fair, doesn't it? No, I said, surprised by the firmness in my voice. It doesn't. This ring means something to me beyond its price tag. I've worn it every day for years, when everyone, including Vanessa, thought it was worthless. Now suddenly it's a family asset? Don't be difficult, my mother sighed. We're talking about potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't care if it's worth millions, I replied. It's not for sale. The conversation ended shortly after, with my mother's disappointment hanging heavy in the air. I sat on our small balcony afterward, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled. The ring caught the fading light, its stone glowing with hidden depths. Marcus joined me, setting a glass of wine by my hand. Your mom? I nodded. They want me to sell it and split the money. As if Grandma's legacy is just another asset to liquidate. He didn't offer platitudes or easy solutions. He just sat with me in the growing darkness, a solid presence beside me. After a while, he spoke. Whatever you decide, I support you. But remember, this ring found its way to you for a reason. Just like this opportunity with Tiffany. Don't let anyone make you feel unworthy of either. The next morning, my world shifted again. I woke to an email from Nina, Mr. Bennett's assistant, with the subject line, "Urgent, please call." My stomach dropped. Had Vanessa's fiancé pulled strings after all? Was my opportunity evaporating before it even began? With trembling fingers, I dialed the number. Maya, thank you for calling back so quickly, Nina said. Mr. Bennett would like to move up the timeline for your collaboration. There's been some interest from the press about our sustainable collection, and he'd like to showcase your designs as the centerpiece. Can you come in this afternoon to discuss? Relief flooded through me. Of course. What time? 2 o'clock. And Maya? Bring that ring of yours. Mr. Bennett has been doing some research that he'd like to share with you. I arrived at the Tiffany studio promptly at 2, dressed more confidently this time in a vintage blazer over a simple dress. The creative team welcomed me like a returning colleague, offering coffee and enthusiastic updates on the collection concept. Mr. Bennett arrived a few minutes later, carrying a leather portfolio and accompanied by an older woman I hadn't met before. Maya, wonderful to see you again, he said warmly. I'd like you to meet Dr. Eleanor Whiting, one of the foremost experts on historical jewelry. She's flown in from London specifically to look at your ring, if you don't mind. Dr. Whiting shook my hand, her grip surprisingly firm for someone of her age. Mr. Bennett's description intrigued me, she said, her British accent crisp. It's not often we find unidentified pieces of this potential caliber. I extended my hand, allowing her to examine the ring. Unlike the cursory glances it had received at Vanessa's party, Dr. Whiting's examination was methodical and reverent. She used specialized tools, taking measurements and photographs, occasionally making notes in a small leather-bound book. After nearly half an hour, she looked up, eyes bright with excitement. Miss Richardson, what you have here is extraordinary. This is not merely a cashmere sapphire, it appears to be one from the legendary Zanskar mines, which produced stones for only 7 years before being depleted. The cutting style and setting are consistent with the work of Anton Gilded, a master jeweler who created pieces for European royalty in the early 1900s. Mr. Bennett leaned forward. Are you certain? Dr. Whiting nodded. The maker's mark is tiny but unmistakable. And the provenance? Ms. Richardson, do you know how your grandmother acquired this ring? I shook my head. Only that my grandfather gave it to her. They didn't have much money, so everyone always assumed it was just costume jewelry. May I ask your grandmother's maiden name? Harrison, I replied. Elizabeth Harrison. Dr. Whiting's eyes widened slightly. She exchanged a glance with Mr. Bennett before turning back to me. I believe your grandmother's ring may have a remarkable history. There are records of a gilded sapphire piece that was given to a young American woman named Elizabeth by a European nobleman in the 1930s. The nobleman's family lost much of their fortune in the aftermath of World War I, and the ring was one of the few valuable pieces that survived. My mind reeled. Are you saying my quiet, modest grandmother received this ring from a European nobleman? It appears so, Dr. Whiting smiled. Love stories often transcend social boundaries. Perhaps your grandfather was not your grandmother's first love. The implications were dizzying. Not just the value of the ring, which Dr. Whiting estimated in the high 6 figures, but the hidden history it represented. A secret romance, a treasure carried quietly through decades, a legacy passed specifically to me. This changes everything about our collaboration, Mr. Bennett said, excitement clear in his voice. Maya, with your permission, we'd like to build a narrative around this ring for our heritage collection. Your designs, inspired by your grandmother's extraordinary piece, the hidden treasure, revealed at last. It's a perfect story. It was perfect. Too perfect, almost, after years of struggling for recognition. I felt a mixture of elation and trepidation. What exactly would that involve? A feature in our catalog. A special display in our flagship store. Press coverage, certainly. Your name and your grandmother's story would be central to the campaign. Public exposure. My designs showcased in Tiffany's windows. My grandmother's ring, and by extension, my family history, examined and celebrated. It was an incredible opportunity. And a terrifying one. I need to think about it, I said finally. This is all happening very quickly. Mr. Bennett nodded understandingly. Of course. Take the weekend to consider. But Maya, opportunities like this, where art, history, and personal narrative align so perfectly, they're exceedingly rare. I left the meeting in a daze, my mind swirling with possibilities and concerns. The sidewalk seemed to tilt beneath my feet as I walked, trying to process everything I'd learned. My grandmother, proper, reserved Elizabeth Harrison, had received this extraordinary ring from a European nobleman. Had there been a great romance I'd never known about? A secret history hidden beneath the familiar family stories? And now, that hidden history might become part of a major jewelry campaign. My name linked with Tiffany. My designs in their windows. It was everything I'd ever wanted professionally. So why did I feel so unsettled? The answer came in a text that pinged as I reached the street corner. Vanessa again, Mom says you're being difficult about the ring. This isn't just about you, Maya. Think of the family for once. That was it, of course. If I agreed to the Tiffany campaign, the ring's value, both monetary and historical, would become public knowledge. The pressure from my family would intensify. And Vanessa would not take this lying down. I hailed a taxi and gave the driver an address, not our apartment, but a small cafe across town where I used to sketch designs when I couldn't afford a proper studio. I needed neutral ground to think, space away from both the excitement of Tiffany and the complications of family. The cafe was quiet in the late afternoon, just a few students with laptops and an elderly couple sharing a pastry. I ordered tea and sat by the window, watching people pass by outside, each carrying their own invisible stories and secrets. My phone buzzed again. Not Vanessa this time, but Marcus. How did the meeting go? Should I pick up champagne on the way home? His simple faith in me brought tears to my eyes. While my family saw only the potential profit in my good fortune, Marcus saw the validation of what he'd always believed, that my talent and vision were exceptional. I called him instead of texting back. When he answered, I could hear the smile in his voice. That good, huh? It's complicated, I said, and proceeded to tell him everything, the ring's extraordinary history, the proposed campaign, my reservations. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. What are you afraid of? He asked finally. Vanessa, I admitted. Mom. The family drama that will explode when this goes public. The potential legal battle over the ring. Those are all external concerns, he pointed out gently. What are you afraid of for yourself? I closed my eyes, letting the question sink in. That I won't measure up, I whispered. That my designs won't be good enough to stand alongside this extraordinary ring. That people will think I got this opportunity because of a lucky inheritance, not because of my talent. Ah, Marcus said. Now we're getting somewhere. It's stupid, I know. It's not stupid, he countered. It's imposter syndrome, and it's completely normal. But Maya, listen to me, Mr. Bennett saw your work before he knew the full story of the ring. The design team responded to your portfolio on its own merits. You earned this. I wanted to believe him. Part of me did. But years of being the family disappointment, of having my creative choices dismissed as frivolous, had left deeper scars than I realized. What should I do? I asked. What would your grandmother want you to do? The question hit me like a physical force. I remembered her hands, wrinkled but still elegant, as she placed the ring on my finger. This isn't just silver and stone, she'd said. This is a reminder that true value isn't always visible at first glance. She'd known. Maybe not the full history or the exact value, but she'd known the ring was special. And she'd chosen me to carry that legacy forward. She'd want me to be brave, I said softly. To value myself even when others don't. Then there's your answer, Marcus said. That night, I made my decision. I would accept Tiffany's offer. I would share my grandmother's ring, and my own designs, with the world. And I would face whatever family storm followed with the quiet dignity my grandmother had always embodied. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly that storm would gather. Or how destructive it would become. Vanessa's next move would threaten not just my opportunity with Tiffany, but the very legacy my grandmother had entrusted to me. I called Mr. Bennett early Monday morning to accept the offer. His enthusiasm echoed through the phone. Wonderful. We'll start right away. The team is already brainstorming display concepts for your collection. We scheduled meetings for the rest of the week, creative sessions, contract finalizations, preliminary marketing discussions. It was happening so fast I barely had time to process it all. That afternoon, I was sketching new designs in our apartment when the buzzer rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I approached the intercom cautiously. Yes? Maya, it's Mom. I need to speak with you. My heart sank. I hadn't expected her to show up unannounced. I buzzed her up, quickly tidying the scattered design papers and coffee mugs. When I opened the door, I was surprised to find my mother alone. In recent years, she rarely visited without Vanessa in tow. She looked older than I remembered, the lines around her eyes deeper, her posture slightly stooped. "Mom," I said, stepping aside to let her in. "This is unexpected." She entered cautiously, glancing around at our modest apartment with what looked like genuine curiosity rather than her usual judgment. "You've made it nice," she said finally. "Thank you. Would you like some tea?" She nodded, settling herself on our sofa while I moved to the kitchen. I could feel her eyes on me as I filled the kettle, particularly on my left hand where the ring glinted in the afternoon light. "Vanessa is filing a legal claim," she said abruptly. I nearly dropped the mugs I was holding. "What? For the ring?" "She's claiming it was improperly bequeathed, that your grandmother wasn't of sound mind when she wrote her will." I returned to the living room slowly, setting the tea things down with deliberate care to hide my shaking hands. "That's ridiculous. Grandma was sharp until the very end." "I know," my mother said, surprising me. "That's why I came alone. To warn you." I studied her face, looking for the catch. "Why would you do that?" She sighed, suddenly looking very tired. "Because I remember the day your grandmother gave you that ring. It wasn't in her will, Maya. She gave it to you on your 16th birthday, while she was still alive. She said you were the only one who would understand its true value." I remembered that day too, but I'd always thought the true value my grandmother spoke of was sentimental, not literal. "If you know that, then why did you call me the other day asking me to sell it and split the money?" My mother looked down at her hands. "Because it's easier sometimes to go along with Vanessa's demands rather than stand against them. I've been doing it for so long, I hardly notice anymore." The admission hung in the air between us, honest in a way our relationship rarely was. "She's always been the strong one," my mother continued. "The determined one. Even as a child, she knew exactly what she wanted and how to get it. You were different. Quieter. More willing to compromise." "You mean more willing to give up what I wanted to keep the peace," I said, the old hurt rising to the surface. She nodded. "Yes. And I took advantage of that. We both did." I didn't know how to respond to this unexpected candor. For years, I'd imagined confronting my mother about her favoritism, but now that it was happening, I felt strangely empty. "Why are you telling me this now?" She reached for her tea, wrapping her fingers around the mug as if seeking warmth. "Because I saw the change in you at Vanessa's party. When you walked out with your head high, I saw your grandmother in you. Her dignity. Her quiet strength." "Mom, let me finish," she said. "I need to say this. I've enabled Vanessa's behavior for too long. Made excuses. Looked the other way. But watching her humiliate you publicly, then turn around and try to claim what's rightfully yours when it suddenly has value, it's opened my eyes to what she's become. What I've allowed her to become." I sat back, stunned by her words. "So what happens now?" "Now I do what I should have done years ago. I stand up for what's right." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. "This is the original card your grandmother gave you with the ring. She asked me to hold on to it until you were older, when you might appreciate the words more. I never gave it to you. That was wrong of me." I took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a simple card in my grandmother's elegant handwriting. "My dearest Maya, with this ring comes a legacy of strength, artistry, and unconventional choices. Like you, it appears simple at first glance, but contains rare beauty and extraordinary value. I choose you as its guardian because you understand that worth isn't measured in dollars or social approval, but in authenticity and courage. May it remind you always to trust your vision, even when others cannot see what you see. With endless pride in the woman you are becoming, Grandma." Tears blurred my vision as I read her words. Even then, had she known? Had she recognized something in me that I was only now beginning to see in myself? "This will help with any legal challenge," my mother said practically. "It proves her intention to give you the ring while she was alive and of sound mind." I looked up from the card. "And you'll testify to that if needed?" She nodded firmly. "Yes. It's time I started making better choices too." After my mother left, I sat for a long time holding my grandmother's card, tracing the elegant script with my fingertip. It felt like a message across time, a validation I hadn't known I was seeking. I called Marcus to share what had happened. His reaction was measured, pleased by my mother's support but concerned about Vanessa's legal threat. "This isn't just about the ring anymore," he pointed out. "If word gets out about a family lawsuit, it could affect your collaboration with Tiffany. They might not want that kind of publicity." He was right, of course. High-end brands like Tiffany value discretion. A messy family dispute over an allegedly stolen heirloom could tarnish the elegant narrative they wanted to build around my collection. I should tell Mr. Bennett, I decided. before he hears it from someone else. The call was difficult to make, but Mr. Bennett's response surprised me. Far from being concerned, he seemed almost energized by the development. Every truly valuable piece has a story, he said. Sometimes those stories include conflict. What matters is truth and authenticity. If your grandmother truly gave you this ring, if it rightfully belongs to you, then we stand by our decision to work with you. His confidence bolstered mine. Thank you. That means more than I can say. Just bring all the documentation to our meeting tomorrow, he advised. Our legal team will review it and advise on next steps. I spent that evening gathering everything I could find: my grandmother's card, photos of me wearing the ring over the years, birthday cards where she'd mentioned it. It wasn't much, but it was truth. The next day, Tiffany's legal team reviewed my documents with professional detachment. Their assessment was cautiously optimistic. The card is compelling evidence of intent, the head lawyer explained. And the fact that you've been openly wearing the ring for years without challenge strengthens your position. Still, litigation can be unpredictable. Are you prepared for what might become a public battle? I thought about Vanessa, about her need to win at all costs. About my own history of backing down to keep the peace. About my grandmother's words. Authenticity and courage. Yes, I said firmly. I am. We moved forward with the collaboration plans. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked closely with Tiffany's design team, refining my concepts, selecting materials, developing prototypes. The creative energy was intoxicating. For the first time in my professional life, I felt truly seen and valued. For my artistic vision. The legal threat from Vanessa hovered at the edges of my consciousness, but I refused to let it overshadow this opportunity. When the formal legal notice finally arrived, I handed it directly to Tiffany's lawyers without even reading it fully. They would handle it. I had designs to create. Then came the bombshell. Not from Vanessa's lawyers, but from a gossip blog known for covering luxury brands and the wealthy elite. The headline made my blood run cold: Tiffany's new designer, fraud. Or family victim. The article was a masterpiece of innuendo and selective facts. It described me as a struggling jewelry maker who had suddenly come into possession of an extremely valuable family heirloom that rightfully belonged to other family members. It mentioned the Tiffany collaboration, speculating about whether the prestigious brand had been misled about the provenance of the inspirational piece. There was only one source who could have provided those particular details. Mr. Bennett called me immediately. Maya, have you seen it? Yes, I said, my voice hollow. I'm so sorry. This is exactly what I was afraid would happen. Come to the office, he said firmly. Now. We need to address this head on. When I arrived, the atmosphere was tense but focused. The PR team had assembled alongside the legal department. Mr. Bennett sat at the head of the conference table. His expression grave. This is a deliberate attempt to undermine our collaboration, he stated as soon as I sat down. The timing, the specific details, it's a calculated attack. I nodded miserably. My sister. Almost certainly, agreed the head of PR, a sharp-eyed woman named Diane. The question is how we respond. We have several options, from ignoring it completely to issuing a strong rebuttal. What do you recommend? I asked, feeling completely out of my depth. Diane leaned forward. Normally, I'd say ignore a blog post like this. It's not major media. But given the specific allegations about the ring's provenance and the implication that Tiffany has been misled, we need to respond. The luxury market runs on trust and authenticity. Mr. Bennett turned to me. Maya, this is ultimately your decision. It's your family, your history, your ring. How would you like to proceed? Everyone at the table was looking at me, the lawyers, the PR team, the creative directors. A week ago, I would have backed down. Suggested we postpone the collaboration. Let things cool off. The old Maya would have retreated to keep the peace. But I wasn't that person anymore. We tell the truth, I said firmly. All of it. My grandmother's gift, my sister's mockery, the Tiffany meeting, the legal threat, everything. No spin, no embellishment. Just the facts and let people decide for themselves. Diane's eyebrows rose slightly. That's unusually transparent. Are you sure? Absolutely. My sister is counting on me hiding, being embarrassed, wanting to avoid conflict. She doesn't expect me to stand in my truth. Mr. Bennett smiled slowly. I like it. Authenticity is our greatest asset here. Let's draft a statement and schedule a small press conference, nothing enormous, just enough to set the record straight. The next 48 hours were a blur of preparation. The PR team crafted a statement that was honest without being inflammatory. The legal team reviewed every word to ensure we didn't say anything actionable. I practiced my brief remarks until I could deliver them without wavering. The morning of the press conference, I stood in our apartment bathroom, staring at my reflection. I'd chosen to wear a simple dress I'd made myself years ago, paired with a necklace of my own design. No brand names, no flashy labels. Just me, the artist, the designer, the woman my grandmother had believed in. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his tie slightly crooked as always. "Ready?" I nodded, reaching out to straighten his tie automatically. "As I'll ever be." "Remember," he said, catching my hand and pressing a kiss to my palm, "you have nothing to be ashamed of. Your talent is real. Your grandmother's gift was real. Stand in that truth." The press conference was small but well attended. Fashion journalists, jewelry industry reporters, even a few mainstream news outlets. As I took my place at the podium, I saw her, Vanessa, sitting in the back row, arms crossed, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. She thought she was witnessing my downfall. I took a deep breath and began to speak. "Thank you all for coming. I'd like to address the recent speculation about my collaboration with Tiffany and Company and the ring that inspired it. This ring," I held up my hand, "was given to me by my grandmother on my 16th birthday. It was her most treasured possession, though none of us knew its true value at the time." I proceeded to tell the whole story, simply, honestly, without casting Vanessa as a villain or myself as a victim. Just the truth of what had happened, from the family party to the Tiffany meeting to the unexpected discovery of the ring's history. "I understand why this story might seem too perfect to be true," I concluded. "A forgotten treasure, a hidden history, a chance encounter. But sometimes life offers us these moments of extraordinary serendipity. My grandmother believed in the ring's special value long before any expert confirmed it. She believed in my artistic vision before any prestigious brand took notice. That faith, in the unseen value of things, in the potential of a person still becoming, that's the true legacy she left me. And that's the spirit I hope to honor in my collaboration with Tiffany and Company." When I finished, there was a moment of complete silence. Then the questions began, respectful, interested, engaged. Not the skeptical interrogation I had feared. Mr. Bennett joined me at the podium to announce that Tiffany would be establishing a new design scholarship in my grandmother's name, celebrating hidden talents and unexpected treasures in the jewelry world. As the press conference concluded and people began to disperse, I noticed Vanessa slipping out a side door. Her expression wasn't anger or defeat, but something more complex, confusion, perhaps, or the first glimmerings of self-reflection. I didn't follow her. Whatever journey she needed to take was her own now. The aftermath was surprising. Rather than damaging the collaboration, the controversy seemed to enhance public interest. The authentic story of my grandmother's ring, combined with the dramatic family dynamics, created exactly the kind of narrative that captures imagination. 3 days after the press conference, I received an unexpected message, a formal withdrawal of the legal claim against the ring. No explanation, no apology, just a terse notification that the matter was closed. Later that same day, my mother called. "She's back down," she said without preamble. "I know. The lawyers told me." It wasn't just the public pressure, my mother said. Though that certainly didn't help her case. Richard, her fiancé, apparently told her he wouldn't be part of a lawsuit that sought to take a family heirloom from its rightful owner. Said it showed poor character. I couldn't help but smile at that. I'm glad someone in her life is willing to stand up to her. "I should have done it years ago," my mother said quietly. "I'm trying to do better now." The first pieces of my Tiffany collection debuted 2 months later. The Hidden Value became their most successful limited edition in years, with waiting lists forming for each handcrafted piece. My grandmother's ring, officially authenticated as a lost gilded masterpiece, was displayed alongside my work, its extraordinary story enhancing rather than overshadowing my designs. On opening night, I stood in the Tiffany flagship store, surrounded by glittering display cases and elegantly dressed patrons. Marcus beside me, his pride evident in every glance. Mr. Bennett circulated through the crowd, stopping occasionally to introduce me to industry legends and influential collectors. It was everything I could have dreamed of professionally. But the true victory was more personal, the quiet confidence I now carried, the knowledge that I could stand in my truth without flinching, the certainty that my grandmother had seen something in me worth nurturing long before anyone else did. As the evening wound down, a familiar figure approached, Vanessa, alone, dressed impeccably but subdued compared to her usual flashy style. "Congratulations," she said stiffly. "The collection is beautiful." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely surprised by her presence. She glanced around at the crowded showroom, at the displays bearing my name, at the enlarged photo of our grandmother as a young woman wearing the now famous ring. "I didn't see it," she said finally. "All those years, I looked right at that ring and saw nothing special. She paused, struggling with words that didn't come easily to her. Maybe I didn't see you either. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was perhaps as close as Vanessa could come. I nodded, accepting the olive branch for what it was. We see what we're looking for, I said gently. Sometimes it takes time to learn to look deeper. She nodded. Once, then turned and walked away, shoulders straight, head high. I didn't know if this moment marked a real change in our relationship or just a temporary truce. But for the first time, I felt no need to chase after her approval or acceptance. I was standing firmly in my own light now. Later that night, as Marcus and I walked home through the city streets, I twisted the ring on my finger, watching how it caught the glow of street lamps and transformed it into something magical. Happy? He asked, his arm warm around my shoulders. Beyond happy, I replied. Grateful. For Grandma. For you. For all of it, even the hard parts. They led me here. He smiled down at me. Your grandmother would be so proud. Not just of your success, but of how you handled everything, with grace and truth. I thought about my journey, from the self-doubt that had plagued me for years to this moment of authentic confidence. From allowing others to define my worth to standing firmly in my own value. It hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been moments of fear, of wavering, of nearly giving up. But through it all, I'd worn my grandmother's ring, this symbol of hidden worth, of value that doesn't announce itself loudly but reveals itself to those patient enough to look deeper. In the end, that was the true legacy she'd left me, not the monetary value of a rare stone, but the courage to believe in my own unseen potential. As we reached our apartment building, I paused to look up at the star-scattered sky. You know what Grandma used to say? The most precious things aren't always the ones that sparkle brightest at first glance. Marcus smiled. Wise woman. Yes, I agreed. She was. And somehow, she saw something in me worth believing in, even when I couldn't see it myself. That night, I placed the ring carefully on my bedside table for the first time in years, no longer needing to wear it constantly as proof of something I now carried within myself, the unshakable knowledge of my own worth, independent of anyone else's validation or approval. The ring had never been about its monetary value. It had been a lesson, waiting patiently for me to be ready to learn it. True worth doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need everyone to recognize it. It simply exists, steady and unchanging, whether acknowledged or not. My sister had mocked what she couldn't understand. But in the end, it wasn't the Tiffany CEO's validation that had transformed my life, it was finding the courage to stand in my own truth, to believe in my own vision, to recognize my own value. That was the real priceless treasure. And it had been within me all along. 6 months after my Tiffany debut, I stood in a sunlit studio in downtown Manhattan, surrounded by my own designs. Not just a collaboration this time, but my very own collection. Maya Richardson jewelry had gone from a dream sketched at a kitchen table to a reality with its own dedicated workspace and a small but talented team. The success of the Hidden Value collection had opened doors I'd only imagined knocking on. Retailers wanted exclusive pieces. Fashion editors requested interviews. Design schools asked me to speak to their students. It was dizzying and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Amara, my new assistant, poked her head around the door. The space for the pop-up shop is confirmed. We can start setting up next Monday. I smiled at her enthusiasm. Amara was a recent design school graduate with boundless energy and an eye for detail. Hiring her had been one of my best decisions. Perfect. And the display cases? Being delivered Friday. Oh, and your mother called. She wanted to confirm lunch tomorrow. My relationship with my mother had undergone its own transformation in recent months. Our weekly lunches had become a fixture in my calendar, sometimes awkward, occasionally tense, but increasingly honest. We were rebuilding on a foundation of truth rather than avoidance. I looked down at my work table, scattered with sketches for my spring collection. The theme was transformation pieces that changed or revealed hidden elements when worn in different ways. It felt right, this exploration of how something could contain multiple truths, multiple possibilities. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, meeting running late. Grab dinner without me? I texted back, no worries. Staying at studio to finish sketches. See you at home. Our lives had become busier, our schedules more complex, but the foundation remained solid. Marcus had been offered a partnership at his architectural firm, recognition of his talent that was long overdue. We celebrated each other's successes without competition or jealousy, a healthy dynamic I'd never witnessed in my family growing up. As evening settled over the city, I lost myself in the flow of creation, pencil on paper, ideas taking shape, problems solving themselves as I worked. This was the part one loved most, the pure act of bringing something new into existence. Before marketing plans or production schedules or profit margins. Just imagination made visible. I was so absorbed that I didn't hear the studio door open. Only when a shadow fell across my sketches did I look up, startled. Vanessa stood there, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Gone was the polished armor of designer clothes and perfect makeup she usually wore. Instead, she was dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. "Your assistant let me in," she said. "I hope that's okay." I set down my pencil, trying to hide my surprise. We hadn't spoken since the night of my Tiffany launch 6 months ago. "Of course. Would you like to sit?" She took the chair across from my work table, her eyes traveling over the scattered sketches and material samples. "These are beautiful," she said, reaching out to touch a delicate silver wire structure. "Thank you." I waited, curious about what had brought her here. Vanessa took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology. A real one, not the half-hearted acknowledgement I gave at your launch." She met my eyes directly. "I was wrong. About the ring. About you. About a lot of things." This was not what I had expected. Vanessa didn't apologize, not sincerely, not without an agenda. "What brought this on?" I asked cautiously. She looked down at her hands. "Richard and I broke up." "I'm sorry to hear that." She shook her head. "Don't be. It was my choice, actually. After everything that happened with the ring and your collection, he said some things that made me look at myself differently. Not in a good way." She paused. "He asked if I would have treated you the same way if our positions had been reversed. If you had been the successful one and I was struggling." "And?" I prompted when she fell silent. "And I couldn't honestly say that I would have been supportive." Her voice dropped. That's when I realized I didn't like who I'd become. The admission hung between us, raw and honest in a way Vanessa rarely allowed herself to be. "It's not just about the ring or the Tiffany deal," she continued. "It's about years of treating you like you were less than me because you chose a different path. Because you valued different things." She gestured at the studio around us. "But look at what you've created. Not just the jewelry, but this life, built on your own terms, true to who you are." I didn't know how to respond. This was the conversation I'd imagined countless times, but now that it was happening, I felt oddly detached from the need for it. Vanessa's approval or understanding, once so desperately important to me, now seemed like an afterthought to a journey I'd already completed. "I appreciate you saying that," I said finally. "It means something, hearing it from you." She nodded, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. "I found this when I was moving out of Richard's place. It belonged to Grandma too. Mom said it should go to you." I opened the box carefully. Inside lay a delicate silver locket on a thin chain. The design was simple but exquisite, clearly from the same era as my ring. "There's a note inside," Vanessa said. I didn't read it. "It's for you." With trembling fingers, I opened the locket. Instead of photographs, there was a tiny folded paper. I carefully extracted it and unfolded it to reveal my grandmother's handwriting, for Maya, to accompany the ring when the time is right. "Remember that your greatest strength lies in seeing the beauty others miss. Trust this gift. It will light your path when others can only see darkness." Tears pricked at my eyes. Another message from across time, another vote of confidence from the woman who had believed in me before I believed in myself. "Thank you for bringing this to me," I said, my voice thick with emotion. Vanessa nodded. "I should have given it to you years ago. Mom gave it to me after Grandma's funeral, told me it was supposed to go with the ring. But she broke off, looking ashamed. I kept it. I was jealous that she left you the ring, even though I never even liked it." "How petty is that?" "We all make choices we regret," I said gently. "Some more than others." She stood up, smoothing her jeans with nervous hands. "Anyway, I wanted you to have it. And to tell you that I'm trying to be better. To see things differently." As she turned to leave, I found myself saying, "Vanessa, wait." She paused, looking back. "Would you like to see the new collection? Before anyone else does?" Surprise flickered across her face, followed by something that looked almost like gratitude. "I'd like that. Very much." For the next hour, I showed her my designs, explained my inspiration, shared the challenges of building a brand from scratch. To my surprise, she listened intently, asking thoughtful questions, offering insights from her experience in PR that were actually helpful. When she finally left, promising to come to the pop-up shop opening, I felt a curious lightness. Not because I needed her approval or even her presence in my life, but because letting go of old resentments created space for new possibilities. I fastened my grandmother's locket around my neck, feeling its gentle weight settle against my skin. Another piece of her legacy, another reminder to trust my own vision. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe for lunch with my mother earlier than usual. I wanted time to gather my thoughts, to decide whether to tell her about Vanessa's visit. Our new relationship was still fragile in many ways, navigating decades of unspoken truths and ingrained patterns. I was surprised to find her already there, sitting at our usual corner table with an unfamiliar folder in front of her. "Maya," she said, rising to greet me with a brief hug, another new development in our evolving relationship. "You look well. Success suits you." I smiled as I sat down. "I'm happy, Mom. Busy, sometimes overwhelmed, but happy." She nodded, studying my face. "You remind me so much of her sometimes. Your grandmother." She had that same quiet certainty. When she knew she was on the right path. This was new territory. My mother rarely spoke of her own mother in such personal terms. "Tell me about her," I said. "Not just as my grandmother, but as your mother." Something softened in her face. "She was remarkable. Stronger than anyone knew. My father, your grandfather, wasn't her first love, you know. Before him, there was someone else. A man from a different world, a different life. The European nobleman," I said, remembering Dr. Whiting's research about the ring. My mother looked surprised. "You know about him?" "Only what the jewelry historian discovered about the ring. That it likely came from a European nobleman who gave it to Grandma in the 1930s. She nodded slowly. "His name was Alexander. He was Russian nobility, his family refugees after the revolution. They'd lost everything except a few heirlooms they managed to smuggle out. He met my mother in New York when she was working as a shop girl. A classic case of different worlds colliding." "What happened?" I asked, fascinated by this glimpse into my grandmother's hidden history. "His family disapproved. Her family disapproved. The usual story." She sighed. "He gave her the ring before he was forced to return to Europe. Promised to come back for her. Then the war came." "Did she ever see him again?" "No. She learned later that he died in the early days of World War II. By then, she'd met my father." My mother's fingers traced the edge of the folder in front of her. "But she kept the ring. Wore it even after she married my father. He understood what it represented, not infidelity, but a chapter of her life that shaped her." I thought about my grandmother, living her quiet, conventional life in suburban New Jersey, carrying this secret history that no one recognized or valued. How many people had looked at her ring and seen only a simple silver band with a cloudy stone? How many had missed the extraordinary story it contained? After my father died, my mother continued. She told me the full story. Made me promise to make sure the ring went to the right person when the time came. "Not the one who wants it most," she said, "but the one who sees what others miss." She looked up at me. "She chose you, Maya. Long before any of us understood." "Why?" I touched the locket at my throat. "Vanessa brought me this last night." "Did you know about it?" My mother nodded. "I did. I gave it to her years ago, told her it was meant to go with the ring. I should have made sure it reached you." "It has now," I said simply. "That's what matters." She pushed the folder toward me. "This is what I wanted to give you today. Your grandmother's letters. From Alexander, from her time in New York, from throughout her life. Her story, in her own words." I stared at the folder, overwhelmed by the gift it represented. "Mom, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything. Just read them when you're ready. I think." She hesitated. "I think she would have wanted you to know her fully. Not just as Grandma, but as Elizabeth Harrison, a woman who lived a remarkable life that most people never saw or understood." Our lunch stretched into the afternoon as my mother shared stories about my grandmother I'd never heard before, her brief career as a photographer's assistant, her volunteer work teaching English to immigrant women, her passion for collecting obscure folk art that no one else appreciated. A picture emerged of a woman far more complex and interesting than the kind but conventional grandmother I'd known, a woman who had lived by her own standards, who had valued substance over appearance, who had seen beauty where others saw nothing worth noticing. By the time we parted, something fundamental had shifted between my mother and me. We weren't just navigating a damaged relationship anymore, we were building something new, founded on shared appreciation for the remarkable woman who had shaped us both. "Thank you," I said as we stood to leave. "For the letters. For the stories. For all of it." She touched my cheek in a rare gesture of affection. "I should have shared them years ago. I'm sorry it took all this drama to make me see what really matters." That evening, I sat in our apartment's window seat, my grandmother's letters spread around me, Marcus quiet in the background as he worked on architectural plans. Each letter was a window into another time, another world, my grandmother's inner life revealed in her elegant, thoughtful prose. I was particularly moved by her reflections after receiving the ring from Alexander. "It seems a simple thing, this circle of silver with its blue stone. Others see only its modest appearance. But I understand what it truly represents, not just Alexander's love, but his recognition of who I am beneath the surface. In a world that values women primarily for beauty or wealth or social position, he valued me for my mind, my spirit, my way of seeing. That recognition is worth more than any diamond. The parallels to my own journey were striking. How many times had I been dismissed or underestimated? How many times had I doubted my own path because it didn't align with conventional measures of success? Marcus joined me, sitting on the edge of the window seat. Finding answers, he asked gently. Finding connections, I replied. It's strange, reading these makes me feel like I knew her better than I realized. Like somehow, across time, we understood each other. He smiled. Maybe that's why she chose you for the ring. She recognized a kindred spirit. I leaned against him, taking comfort in his steady presence. All those years I spent trying to prove myself to my family, wishing they could see my worth. And all along, she saw it. Before anyone else did. Before I did. Some people have that gift, he said. Seeing potential others miss. I thought about my own journey, from the insecure younger sister desperate for validation to the woman I was now, confident in my vision and my value. It hadn't happened overnight. It hadn't happened because of external validation, even from Tiffany or the fashion press. It had happened because I'd finally recognized what my grandmother had seen all along, that true worth comes from authenticity, from courage, from seeing beauty where others see nothing special. The next morning, I woke with a new idea fully formed in my mind. I rushed to my sketchbook, capturing it before it could fade, a new collection inspired by my grandmother's letters. Not literal interpretations, but pieces that captured the essence of her hidden life, her quiet rebellion against convention, her ability to find extraordinary value in unexpected places. I called it the Letter Collection, each piece accompanied by a small card containing a brief excerpt from my grandmother's writings. Not just jewelry, but stories made tangible. Connections across time. When I presented the concept to my team, they were immediately enthusiastic. This is genius, Amara said. It's personal but universal. Everyone has stories in their family, histories that shape them. We worked intensely over the next few months, bringing the collection to life. I sourced unusual materials, not just precious gems, but objects with character and history. Antique buttons. Sea glass. Fragments of vintage lace preserved in resin. Each piece was one of a kind, each with its own story to tell. For the centerpiece of the collection, I created a locket inspired by my grandmother's, but with a modern twist. The exterior appeared simple, almost austere. But when opened, it revealed an intricate interior of gold filigree and tiny, perfect diamonds that caught the light like stars. The message was clear: true value often lies beneath the surface, waiting for those who take the time to look deeper. The collection's launch coincided with the one-year anniversary of my Tiffany debut. We held it in a small gallery space, intimate rather than flashy. Instead of traditional display cases, each piece was presented alongside artifacts that connected to its story: vintage photographs, handwritten notes, small objects that might seem worthless to casual observers but contained worlds of meaning. I invited only a small group: loyal clients, select press, people who had supported my journey. My mother came, of course. And to my surprise, so did Vanessa, without fanfare or dramatic entrance. She moved through the exhibition thoughtfully, taking time with each piece, reading the accompanying stories. When she reached me, her eyes were bright with what might have been tears. "This is extraordinary, Maya. Truly." She gestured to the displays around us. "You've done something I never could, you've made people stop and really see. Not just the jewelry, but the stories behind them. The value that isn't obvious at first glance." Coming from Vanessa, who had built her career on surface impressions and flashy appearances, this was perhaps the highest compliment she could offer. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot." As the evening progressed, I found myself standing beside the centerpiece display, the modernized locket paired with my grandmother's original ring, now officially valued at over $500,000, but worth far more to me than any appraisal could capture. Mr. Bennett joined me, champagne flute in hand. "You've created something remarkable here, Maya. Not just beautiful objects, but a new way of thinking about value." I smiled. I had a good teacher. My grandmother understood that worth isn't always visible on the surface. Sometimes you have to look deeper, past first impressions, past assumptions. A lesson many of us could benefit from, he agreed. Myself included. I've spent decades in this industry, surrounded by precious materials, and yet I've missed treasures hiding in plain sight. The gallery lights caught the stone in my grandmother's ring, bringing out depths of blue that seemed to shift and change with every movement. Like her life, like mine, more complex, more interesting, more valuable than casual observers could ever guess. As the event wound down and guests departed with thoughtful expressions rather than the usual fashionable ennui, I felt a profound sense of rightness. This was my path, not just creating beautiful objects, but helping people see beauty they might otherwise miss, value they might otherwise dismiss. My mother approached as I was gathering my things. "Your grandmother would be so proud," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Not just of your success, but of how you've honored her story." "I wish she could have seen it," I said. "I think she did," my mother replied. "I think she saw who you would become long before any of us did. That's why she chose you for the ring." She recognized a kindred spirit, someone who understood that true value isn't always what glitters brightest at first glance. Later that night, back in our apartment, I carefully placed my grandmother's ring in its new home, a specially designed case that protected it while keeping it visible, a reminder rather than a secret. I no longer needed to wear it constantly to prove something to myself or others. Its lessons had become part of me. Marcus wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder as we looked at the ring together. "Happy?" he asked. "More than that," I said. "Aligned? Like I found the path I was always meant to walk." He nodded. "Your grandmother would say you've always been on it. You just needed to trust your own vision." I thought about the journey that had brought me here, from the sister mocked for her cheap ring to a designer celebrated for seeing value others missed. It hadn't been easy. There had been moments of doubt, of fear, of nearly giving up. But through it all, my grandmother's legacy had guided me, not just the physical ring, but the deeper truth it represented. That night, as moonlight filtered through our bedroom window, I thought about all the people wearing my designs across the city, across the country. Each piece carrying not just my creative vision, but an invitation to look deeper, to find meaning beyond surface appearances, to recognize value that doesn't announce itself loudly. My sister had mocked what she couldn't understand. The world had overlooked what it didn't immediately value. But in the end, it wasn't external validation that had transformed my life, it was finding the courage to trust my own vision, to believe in what I saw even when others couldn't see it. That was my grandmother's true gift to me. Not a ring worth $500,000, but the priceless understanding that worth, real, lasting worth, comes from staying true to your own vision, even when standing alone. And that was a legacy worth passing on. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.